Hey everyone, it is Abigail of the Black Book Space. Now, if you are a lover of steamy romance novels like I am, I want you to sit tight so we can talk about 5 books in no particular order that are the steamiest that I have found in a while. So the first book I'm going to start off with may be a surprise to you because this author is not really talked about very much anymore, but I know she's still around. It is Zane, Total Eclipse of the Heart. So I've read several books by Zane. This is my absolute favorite because I feel like the love story is just so very beautiful. And it's just like these two were meant to be. Sometimes in Zane books, there are elements of like violence and mental health. I like the fact that she's always talking about mental health in her books. I think that is such a beautiful representation of our community because it's important to get help for yourself. Whether you're acutely suffering from something, or you're just dealing with any type of day-to-day trauma, having someone to help you is really important. Zane has a really wonderful therapist that's in several of her books, and I love that. I don't believe she's in this one, but I like the fact that she brings that element in. I think it's just so great, and I think that she just does a really beautiful job of it. It's not like, you know, suspicious looking. Like, it really flows seamlessly into her books. A lot of people think that Zane's books are just about like wild sex. It's not all they're about. There's always some type of mystery element in there. You really have to think to understand these books. There's always an actual love story in there. People in these books are dealing with real things. She's a real one. I really like Zane. So this book is about 2 people, Brooke Alexander and Damon Johnson. They end up together in the end, but in the beginning, they're both in 2 different relationships, and they're not relationships that serve them very well, I'll just be honest. And I promise I won't give away any spoilers. These 2 go through quite a bit. Poor Damon actually ends up in an accident. He's a really smart guy, and he's trying to create an app that is for differently abled people, and you know, for them to find love, because everyone deserves to find love. And he didn't see, you know, there was a niche in the market for him, and he jumped on it, and his wife was not feeling that. She was not supportive of him at all. That was really, really sad. So these 2 end up getting together. Of course, it's a very steamy, because like I said, it's a Zane book. This is one of her older books. This one was written in 2009, and I think I probably got it and if not around that time, after then. So it's one of the older books that I've read in this group of books that I'm going to talk about. And I wanted to bring some attention to it and celebrate it today because I feel like she deserves a resurgence. I feel like we need to just bring Zane back on the radar and just read all of her books again and celebrate them because they really just paint such a beautiful picture of Black erotica, which is really important. So I've talked about this book quite a bit before because it's one of my favorites by Farah Roshan. She's one of my favorite authors. This is The Boyfriend Project. So of all the 3 books, I think I like this one the best because it has such a surprise ending. It starts off with, like, if you know anything about this series, these 3 ladies were dating the same guy and they didn't know, and they were able to find out because of social media, right? So you can't hide these days. I don't know why people think they can hide. So this guy was dating all 3 of them, and one of them went live and was talking about it, and then they all met each other and became best friends, and I love that. And so during this time, after that, Samia actually became like a little famous from this because people at her job, you know, found out about it and were asking her about it. One person in particular, this guy just like shows up at her job. Daniel Collins just like shows up at her job, is just suddenly working there. I don't know how this was able to happen. This man, fine as hell, just shows up at her job. He's working there, and he's supposed to be on a special assignment, but he sees Samia and like gets very distracted. And it turns out he's a, you know, secret agent. But he wouldn't tell her that. So like I talked about in the other week when we were talking about Sister Gumbo, when you're in a relationship, it's really important to be honest. It's really important to communicate. If this man had communicated to Samia what was actually going on, maybe not all the specifics because you're supposedly not supposed to tell anybody when you're a secret agent, he would given her a little hint, things would have been better. But no, he was on the verge of like moving her in with him, and they were together all the time, and she just felt completely lied to, and she'd already been through something like this. So it turned out really bad. But in between those bad times, there were some very steamy times, and I think you need to read the book to, you know, experience them for yourself. Farrah Rashan is an amazing author. She always brings the steam. She always brings the mystery and definitely the laughs. So I highly recommend you check this book out. The link to purchase it is in the description box. You could probably find it at your local library as well. Let's put Farrah Rashan on the map too. So if you have a book by her, take a picture of yourself and tag her and me, the Black Book Space on Instagram. I would love to see that because it would just make me really, really happy. I want to see who else is reading books by her as well. Act Your Age, Eve Brown. Yes, Talia Hibbert. Now, you know Talia Hibbert, like, she's so different. So she's a British author, first of all. She writes about these three sisters, the Brown sisters, and they're all British. So that British humor comes out in this book, and or in all of the books actually, but this one is my favorite because it's about Eve, and Eve is the youngest. Talia Hibbert does a really good job of painting neuroatypical and differently abled people in a beautiful and romantic light. We all deserve love, and I love that she has representation of everyone in her books. So this one's no different. Eve is such a character. She actually leaves home because her parents like get on her case about how irresponsible she's being, and she goes driving and finds this bed and breakfast and just like shows up there and it was like, could I have a job? And poor Jacob is like the other main character in the book, and he was like, I don't think so because you have pink hair and this is just not gonna work out. Like, it was just the way he'd say things was hilarious. She ends up hitting this man with her car. It is one of the funniest books I've read in a long time, but there is some steam in there, you guys, and I want you guys to read this book so you can check out like all the steamy things that are happening in here because it's so lovely. And it's just what makes a good romance novel a good romance novel, right? So Act Your Age, Eve Brown. I love all three books, but I would say Act Your Age, Eve Brown is probably my favorite. I would say it's probably my favorite because it's just so funny. And it takes place in a bed and breakfast, one of my favorite places to be. And I love how Jacob runs his business. Like, he has his own manuals that he writes, and they're very funny, and like there's a lot of cursing in there. He's so wonderful with his customers, and his backstory is the reason he started this bed and breakfast is because he went to a bed and breakfast once with his aunt. His parents didn't raise him, and he decided then, like, this is what I want to open. I love the way it makes people feel, and I'd love to do something like this. And he decided to do that, and I love backstories like that. I think that's really wonderful. So this story is really good. Check it out. Get all the Brown Girls books, again by Talia Hibbert. This next book is one that I've had for quite a while. It is in very poor shape. I don't know what the heck I did to this book, but it's called Reckless. It's probably one of the older books that I own. I don't think I've had it longer than the Zane book, but it was also written in 2008 by Stacey Abrams. It was copyrighted by Stacey Abrams. Interesting. Written by Selena Montgomery. So I like this book, because it takes place in Georgia, and that is one of my favorite places. You can feel the humidity in this book. And it's about a woman who goes back to her hometown because the woman who raised her is in trouble. Someone ends up dead, and they're saying that her foster mom is the one who did it, and she's an attorney, so she's working to get her off. It's just a wonderful story about redeeming yourself, running away from your past, which you can't always do. And Kelly, the main character of the story, starts seeing the sheriff, which she didn't really want to do, because in the beginning of the book, like, he sees her in this high ticket car, like flying through red lights like crazy, and he pulls her over, and she's like, do you know who I am? Like, I'm not even supposed to be around this podunk town. Like, you don't even know me. Like, what is going on? And then of course, you know, like any love story, they end up being together and they have just this beautiful love story, and it's so steamy and wonderful. Highly recommend. I like that it is showing us as professionals, because that is not always the case in many stories in Hollywood. That's why we end up writing our own books. We have to paint ourselves in a positive light because we're beautiful, positive people. We see all of this negativity on a regular basis. It really does do something to your mindset. So books like this, I feel like, really help to change that mindset and help to, you know, just elevate the world. So highly recommend this book. Again, it's called Reckless. The link is in the comments. I've had it a long time. I feel like somebody probably gave me this book. Maybe it was originally my mom's book. I don't know, but I don't think I took very good care of it. So that's a little embarrassing, but take better care of yours. Grab a copy in the links below. Last book. This is our 5th one. This book is one of my favorites of all time. 7 Days in June. This is the first book that I ever celebrated at an epic book chat. And it was one that was recommended to me from a podcast that I was listening to. I love this book. I know that at some point, you know, like when we were talking about the book during our epic book chat, when we were celebrating the book, we were talking about how it's not your typical love story, because it's mostly like these two were like trauma bonding. But that's the thing too. I think honestly, to be honest, trauma bonding can be a form of love. And love just, you know, it heals all, so it's okay. But it was actually a very sad book because both of these individuals had such a hard time growing up, you know. So Genevieve is the main character, the female main character, and Genevieve is a woman. She grew up with a mom who was just like everywhere and she wasn't taking care of her child. That ended up being really bad. And then Shane Hall was her best friend. But the thing is, they only knew each other technically for 7 days. And those 7 days was enough to change their entire lives, where they were always kind of like looking for each other. And Shane was always wanting to come back to her. And I just love that. I feel like that in and of itself is just such a beautiful concept. You know, the idea of wanting and longing for someone so much that at some point you do come back. They do decide though that they probably better off as friends because they have so much that they need to deal with. And one of the things we talked about at the epic book chat was that they probably both, you know, needed some counseling, which is true. But I wanted them to get the counseling together, and I wanted them to just be together and just that would have made me so happy. And we're not really sure if that's what happens at the end, because that's not how it ends. But this book is so steamy. Like, some of the scenes in here are just so insane. So I highly recommend you grab a copy of this book, because it's not just, once again, about a steamy relationship that's just one and done. It's really about the depth of love and what loving someone really means. Some of the most profound things in this book is about racism, of course, and you know that's going to come up, and how Shane talks about how he's tired of, as a black writer, being expected to define racism and have racism as an antagonist in his book. And it's just like, I'm just me, and that's not what we're going to talk about on this panel today. He's so unapologetically himself. For a long time, Shane suffered from alcoholism. So that's something else that comes up in this book. Very important concept that isn't talked about enough. The way that we deal with our traumas is different for different people. And I like how the author, Tia Williams, who I didn't say is the author, I like how she, you know, expounded on that in this book. There were just so many beautiful, deep things. If you haven't read this book, I don't know what you're doing, but you need to get your hands on a copy. Grab one in the comment. Get it from your local bookstore or your local library, whatever. Borrow it from a friend. But please read this book and tell me what you thought of it, because it's one that definitely just blew my mind. Like, I feel like I got so lucky to remember that this was a book that I wanted to read, and to be able to open the concept of the epic book chat with a book like this, because it really set the bar for what else I was going to read for the rest of the time. So it helped me to make history, and I was so happy to celebrate the book. And when I, talked about how much I loved this book and I tagged the author on Facebook about it, she commented on my post. I was so excited, and that just blew my mind, and it just let me know that I was on the right track. So it definitely set the bar, and makes me want to keep celebrating books by Black authors all of the time. I think that you should read all of these books, and if you've read any of them, please let me know what you thought of them. Whatever you do today, I hope that is something that brings you joy. Bye.